This is a bit of biology with Mr. Rock, and today we are going to be talking about macromolecules. And this is kind of a bigger topic, so we're actually going to break this up into two videos, so this is going to be part one. If you're saying to yourself, wow, macromolecules, sounds like a big word, I don't know anything about this, you're actually wrong, because you do know what macromolecules are, you just probably have never called them macromolecules before. So macromolecules essentially is just the food that we eat. So up here I have the four macromolecules: carbohydrates, lipids, which are also known as fats, proteins, and nucleic acids. So the top three, you see those on like your food labels. In this video, we are only going to be talking about carbohydrates and lipids, just to try to keep it under 8 minutes. So just for sake of time, we're going to have another video on proteins and nucleic acids that will be on the Moodle page. Before we get going and explain what a carbohydrate is, what a lipid is, I want to just talk about three major definitions that will help you understand this unit a little better. The first is the actual definition of a macromolecule, which is a complex molecule that is essential for life. So all living organisms need these four macromolecules to live and be successful. And just to help you out with the words, macro in biology and in all things, macro means large. So macromolecules are like large molecules. So that brings me down to the next part, which is the monomer and the polymer. A monomer is a small molecule that can combine with others to make a polymer. Okay, and then a polymer is a compound made of small molecules arranged in a simple repeating structure. So on the surface, these definitions, they might make sense to you, they might be a little confusing, but when we're talking about monomers and polymers, I want you to think of Legos, because that's a really easy way to understand this. One monomer is just one Lego piece. So carbohydrates, there's going to be monomers, and then they're going to come together. All of these monomers get put together like Legos get put together to make a big final creation, which is the polymer. So monomer is just one piece. The polymer is the huge finished project. So what are carbohydrates? If I asked you guys that at the beginning of the class, people probably said, oh, it's bread, it's pasta, it's potatoes. A lot of people don't really think of this as carbohydrates, but also sugars, such as like, artificial sugar like you'd find in soda, or sugar you find in fruits like bananas or kumquats. So a carbohydrate, what it is specifically is it is a molecule, macromolecule, with hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. So those are elements, and those come together to make up carbohydrates. So when we're actually talking about the monomers, the one pieces, and what they come together to make the polymers, this is what we're talking about for carbohydrates. So the monomer for carbohydrates is called a monosaccharide. And that's a bigger word, but what I want you to remember is that's just one Lego piece. The most popular one we talk about in biology class is glucose. So glucose is going to be our example of a monomer for carbohydrates. There's other ones, but glucose is going to be the one we focus on. These glucose molecules, these monosaccharides, come together, get stitched together, and they make one huge molecule, which I have the Millennium Falcon over here. That was like my favorite Lego thing to build growing up. But when you put all these monosaccharides together, they get built into a polysaccharide. There's a lot of different polysaccharides, but starch, cellulose, and glycogen are examples of some polysaccharides. So the last thing that we need to talk about before we move on to lipids is what do we use carbohydrates for? There's two primary reasons why we eat carbohydrates or why we need carbs. One, it is the primary source of energy. So with runners or athletes, they typically carb load before the big game or the big run because that is a primary source of energy, is carbs. A second reason why we would use carbs, we don't use this, but plants and insects do, they use it for structure, to support, and plants like use it to keep them sturdy. So some organisms use it for structure, humans use it as a primary source of energy. The last macromolecule we're talking about in this video is lipids. A lot of people might not know what lipids are, but you know what fat is, and you know what foods are fatty, and you might try to avoid some fatty foods, but examples would be butter, oil, meat, avocados, almonds, peanut butter, all that stuff has a lot of fat in it. So a lipid is a macromolecule with primarily carbon and hydrogen and just a couple of oxygen atoms. So when we talk about the Lego pieces coming together to make the big polymer, so the monomer and the polymer, each macromolecule is going to have their own monomers and polymers. The monomer for lipids is called fatty acids. So that's displayed here, and it's right next to the red Lego piece, showing that these fatty acids are going to come together to make a polymer. And the polymer over here is called a triglyceride, and each one of these is a fatty acid chain. So just like I was saying at the beginning, the monomers or the Lego pieces, they come together to make the polymers. Just like Lego pieces come together to make the final creation, we have Optimus Prime down there for this example. Okay, so last thing that we're ending with here today is what is the function of lipids? Why do we need fat? You need fat in your diet, you need lipids in your diet. Why do we need them though? Number one, it is long-term energy storage. So when you burn through all of your carbohydrates, carbohydrates are the first source of energy, but when you burn through them, after you've used up all your carbs, you actually tap into your fat reserves for energy. So that's good. It's like a plan B. Number two, protection against heat loss. I have a seal up here, and they're known for having a lot of fat underneath their skin because it keeps them warm in the Arctic waters. So it protects against heat loss, which is really good. And then one thing that every organism needs is your lipids make up cell membranes. And every cell membrane has a case that goes around it. So it has kind of a protection that goes around it, and we call that thing the cell membrane. And that cell membrane is made up of lipids, and you are made up of cells. So every single person, every single living organism needs lipids in order to live. This has been a bit of biology with Mr. Rock. I'm signing off.